Good morning, Chris. Good morning, Martin.
Good morning,
Alicia.
Welcome back to the podcast to you both.
Thank you.
So we're talking about the Privacy Act today and basically a legal case around the Australian clinical labs.
Yep, big one.
Yes, definitely sounds like a big one. Can you walk us through what made the ACL case so significant?
Well, it's the first time the Australian Information Commissioner has actually followed through on fining a company for a notifiable data breach. So we've had the laws in place since 2018, so which was an amendment to the Privacy Act 1988. So the notifiable data breach scheme of 2018 made a few more conditions around businesses having to report if they had an issue with a breach, and having some requirements around penalties if they did have a breach. Since 2018, we've had no actual fines imposed by the office at all, and the Commissioner has not actually imposed fines until this particular case. So this one had to go through the courts as well, because even though the legislation was put in place with penalties included in it, you have to actually make sure that the penalties are reasonable. So you have to then, like the Commissioner takes it to court, and the federal court will actually define whether or not it's a reasonable imposition of the penalty. So that's what's happened here. The first case where it's been followed through all the way through the court, they've been found to have the penalty implied and required, and now we have something to really report on the fact that the notifiable data breach scheme is actually starting to have some teeth.
Yeah, so it's quite significant because we've spoken about notifiable data breach. We work on response plans with our clients around that breach so that they're meeting those requirements. Not that it's just a response plan. You need obviously a few things in place. But when I say a few things in place, a lot of that's guesswork, right? So it's whatever someone in that position, what would reasonably be done, right? And you've got to, it takes some interpretation of what that is. And those penalties that Martin was talking about kind of started at, did they start at 2.4 or less? They're about 2.4 million, and then they've been adjusted, not every year, but they've been adjusted, I think, about 3 times. So we're at 50 million or 3 times the turnover, and it could be more than that. So that's where it is currently. But where the laws have changed, I think, has given the Information Commissioner more powers to actually take someone to court. And that's what's actually happened. And in the 70-plus page document that's come out of the court papers and the rulings and et cetera, that gives us as people in cybersecurity, as well as businesses, a much clearer idea of what is deemed reasonable to protect someone's privacy or private data, so that you actually have a better understanding of, well, what is it that I'm actually need to do? So again, it's not prescriptive specifically, like we can't say for definite, but it gives us a much clearer idea.
Yeah, wow. So you can tell me a little bit more about this case. So they acquired MedLab Pathology, is that correct? And then they suffered a breach not long after that?
Yeah, it's quite interesting. So ACL, the company that purchased MedLab Pathology, is quite a large organization. I think it's very large turnover. I can't remember how big. Was it a billion turnover? It's a large ASX listed business. Their security and so forth is actually up to scratch. It's as you would expect from a large organization. Unfortunately, in this particular case, they've had under an M&A, mergers and acquisitions, they've purchased a business. They've determined that there's certain areas that are laxed, and they're like, oh, okay, well, we'll just bring them into our systems, as you would, right? Yeah. It makes perfect sense. But these projects can take a while, like to get around. Like, I don't know how many sites they had, and the complexities of projects in IT. People in IT would know. These things do take time, but unfortunately, that MedLabs was breached within 2 months. So they didn't have a lot of time, and then all of a sudden it's ACL's problem, right? So I think that's where it kind of came
Would you
undone.
call that unlucky or?
Some of the interesting parts are that when they actually had the breach, where they actually had basically a ransomware event sort of propagate throughout the med lab environment. It also attempted to breach into some of the ACL environment, but their endpoint protection actually stopped it. So MedLab's endpoint protection was not up to the same standard as ACL's endpoint protection, and that we do talk about that not all endpoint protections are created equal. So there are better packages out there, and certainly in a lot of the court documents they do name this product, although they redact it.
They did
So
redact.
we can't see what product it was, but
That's disappointing.
Well, we have some guesses because you can see how long the name was. So there's a few guesses that we've had about what product it was. But it is interesting that it would have been far worse had ACL had something similar to what MedLab had in place.
Yeah, and something to note just on the endpoint protection, it's not as easy as I'm using the right endpoint protection. There is configuration as well. It's like people going like, oh, I use Sentinel-1, so therefore it's better than just using Defender. That's not necessarily the case. Same with Defender. It's got to be configured correctly. It's got to be monitored. It's got to be, there's a lot of elements that go with that, and that's where these findings in the court document that's quite telling.
It is.
Yeah.
Yeah, wow. So what would reasonable steps have looked like for a pathology provider handling like such sensitive data?
It's an interesting one. You know what? We often talk about the basics and things like, and the reason why I bring this up again is it is in the court documents of patching not being done, right? Running old, out-of-date software, Windows servers, specifically in this environment, so that are outside an end-of-life situation. So they're not kept up to date anymore. There's no way to patch it to secure. And this is where, Martin, you did a podcast on legacy, or was it an article? I can't remember.
Yeah, about legacy.
On legacy software and hardware. It is, it becomes a problem within an organization whereby their security is weakened because they're still trying to keep whatever this product is going, and they haven't looked at, or they don't want to invest in moving to whatever the latest is for that product. It's kind of like, well, it's not broken, don't try and fix it kind of scenario. But the problem is it is broken. The security is broken. So in this case, some of the basics, no patching, updates, running EDR software, so your endpoint protection and response software that's up to task, MFA lacking, no encryption of data. It's just, it's one thing after the other, and you just go, no, right? So there's a lot of things that needed to be in place that just were, and there were a lot more.
There were, and also you're talking about the data, like the information. So MedLab Pathology did a lot of tests on things like fertility and sexually transmitted disease tests and those sorts of things. So when you've got patient data that includes information that can cause harm if it's actually released, because we talk about the harm all the time when we're talking about the notifiable data breach, it's about what harm has been caused. The likelihood of harm increases quite significantly when you've got very, very private information. And that's the information that was involved in this particular breach. And they had extracted the information. So this is one of those ransomware events that we've talked about this before a few times, where ransomware originally was just encrypting the files, and then you paid your ransom and you got decrypted, or the model sort of changed to the point where people stopped paying the ransoms and they would just restore from backups and be done with it. The criminals got smarter, and what they would do is steal the information first, then encrypt it all, and then make you pay a ransom, not only to de-encrypt the files, but also to stop them from actually releasing the information on the dark web.
We've talked about that before, haven't we?
We
Chris?
have a few times.
And that ransom piece around the data, because they already have it, that's where we get into these sorts of situations where the likelihood of harm is actually quite high.
Because they're not
Yeah.
necessarily going to give that information back.
No, and we had a recent case of this with Qantas. That their one of their applications was breached, and they were ransomed for the data to be released on the web, and basically the application provider and Qantas said, nope, we're not paying that. So it's been released. So all of that Qantas data is actually out there, freely available for anyone who wants to pay a few dollars for it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, it's
And
pretty
in
scary.
this case, unfortunately, when we speak about harm, as Martin said, we talk about things like, with health data, it could be things like reputational harm, mental health is another one. The other one is financial harm, and that's kind of where we start to get to in the personally identifiable information. So your PII information, not just health information, could be financial. So then there's financial harm as well. Unfortunately for them, they had both lots. So they had a bunch of credit cards as well. So there was a lot of harm there. So it would have been a relatively easy case, I think, to find them at fault and kind of lodge that fine against them. So not that the Information Commissioner would agree with me that it's an easy case. I was recently down in Melbourne with Martin at the cyber conference. That happens every year in Melbourne. And I went and watched one of the talks that I saw. Obviously, there was a lot of discussion around this particular case. I saw two talks, independent lawyers, and I saw one where a panel discussion, and the guy, forget his name, unfortunately, was the lead of the investigative team for the Information Commissioner. So, and they've got a lot on their plate.
Well, that would have been an interesting talk to
It
listen
was
to,
super
though.
interesting. Yeah.
So on that, we should probably point out that this might be the last one of these sorts of cases.
No,
coming
well, I'm
through.
sure it won't be.
Absolutely not.
Yeah.
And he did say as well, because the fine that was issued here was 5.8 million. So it was like 4.2, 4.6 million for the breach, so not securing the data. There was 800,000 for not investigating promptly of the issue. There was another 800,000 for then not notifying the Information Commissioner. And then above the 5.8, there's another $400,000 that they've agreed to pay for the Information Commissioner's investigation costs. So
Well, that certainly all added up fast, didn't
it
it?
did, and he did say that would be the floor. So that would be the minimum that they would be going after. You've got to remember that this breach took place back in 22. So the fines were set, I think they were probably still 2.4 million at that point, right? Where now it's a lot higher.
But it was based on per record breached, isn't it?
I think so. I'm not sure exactly how they calculated, but
Yeah. When they calculated out what the potential fine could have been was
was it a
billion?
It was in billions. It was in the billions.
Ouch. So getting back to the part of the fine that was the not telling not notifying about the breach.
Yeah.
Is that because they thought they would get away with it?
I think it's just time. They started off assuming that data was not taken. So it was very, very slow going. I think they even sent out an email to the clients.
They thought that the data wasn't stolen. They had a consultant who said it's unlikely data's been stolen.
Yeah.
And even after they kind of had a few indications, and the ACSC, the Australian Cybersecurity Centre, also said, we've heard on the dark web that your data has been stolen. And they still
So there were definitely indicators, and they should have done more. So quicker, more prompt at their investigation. And as soon as they knew that there was even a potential problem, they should have notified the Information Commissioner. Now, legally, you have, I think it's 30 days to notify the Information Commissioner. So if you're dragging your heels on that, then that's going to be a problem. And, we've...
$1,000 problem in this case.
Correct. And the thing is, and we've advised customers as well, obviously, always get your own legal advice. Often this runs through their insurance broker, will then get legal and forensics and so forth involved. I literally dealt with the case last week. It's very specific. And if there's any hint at there is a potential problem, that is enough to go and notify. Absolutely. But again, speak to your lawyers. They will give you the proper legal advice of what you should and shouldn't do.
Well, I have a little note here and I am going to read it. Justice Haley was clear that outsourcing or lacking internal expertise doesn't absolve directors. So this might open up a little bit of a wider conversation. How should boards balance reliance on external cyber expertise while maintaining director oversight? Is this
Martin,
something?
this is
Yeah, I feel like
for
this
you.
is a Martin question.
I think a big part of director oversight is that they need to maintain sort of visibility over what's going on, and that requires them to be involved. So, and asking questions. I mean, the biggest part of a board is they need to ask questions of their management team, of their CEO, of their CIO. How are they availing themselves of the information of where they are? So they should be asking, what have we got in place to protect data? What have we done to try and mitigate an issue if something like this happens? It's the questions that they have to ask, and then they have to get the answers back from their management team.
Absolutely. And just so we're clear, it was made clear again in the court findings and that they cannot absolve of those duties or just pass them out. So it's like, oh, we've got this IT company, or we have a managed security provider looking after that. You absolutely cannot do that. I've got a number of meetings lined up over the next couple of weeks and into next year bookings to go and actually brief boards on what it is that they need to be across. And again, there's absolutely no excuse. It's not a case of hiring someone like ourselves to go do that. You don't need to do that, right? We're there to help, and it can certainly give you more insight into what that looks like. But the Australian Institute of Company Directors has a cybersecurity governance paper, right, that you can go and get. Boards can read through it. There's even a summary version of that literally has boxes of going, what should directors be asking in these 5 areas around cybersecurity? So you definitely need to do that. What we're also seeing is that boards are kind of now looking and reaching out to get someone on the board that has more IT or cybersecurity expertise to give them some sort of guidance across that board. So lack of education around that is not going to cut it anymore, and it never has, to be fair.
Ignorance has never been a defense.
No. So it's...
Ignorance is not bliss.
helps you sleep better.
It does.
But I think
Until it doesn't.
Yeah.
I think part of what companies need to start looking at, and I've been banging on about this for many, many years, is small data. For so many years, we all talked about big data. Let's collect as much data as we can, hold on to it, save it. Didn't even know what we were going to do with it 10, 15 years ago. We just wanted to collect it all, because at some point we knew we'd be able to use analytics or data mining to find some golden piece of epiphany out of that information. But now we're at the other point. We need to go small data. Keep only what you need and not keep old records, PII, employee records,
Absolutely.
anything. Should all be gone.
I think we did actually a whole episode on that, didn't we? Data hygiene.
We did. And I'm having a lot more conversations with businesses around where that data lives. Now, I would say if you are in health, pathology lab, anything like that, your doctors and so forth, as well as professional services. So your legal and finance tend to collect a lot of PII. Legally, they have to. Unfortunately, they need to look at that as well. But that's a different story. But what you do need to look at is where that's kept and how it's kept. There's far too many organizations that just expect their clients to fill in a tax return, as an example, and email it back to them. You can't be doing that sort of thing. So same with lawyers, like, just take a photo of your driver's license and email it to me. No, absolutely not. That's not how it's done. And if you're private individual or in an organization, and you have a company asking that, you need to push back straight away. I've done that a couple of times this year, and I've had every single one of them actually turn around and adjust their systems. They've gone to their IT teams and worked out how to do that better. So instead of me sending an tax return, they created a secure SharePoint page that I could upload that to. So there's always a way, but you need to ask the question.
Well, I think I have mentioned before that I had that similar situation with enrolling one of my kids at school, and they asked just to email all the application, all the rate, everything to say that you were in the area.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, I had Chris on one shoulder, Martin on the other. So I hand delivered it. But I just thought, wow, that's crazy. It's not a small school.
No.
And I just thought, yeah, wow, that was a bit scary.
Same, and I'm having a lot of conversations, like I said, a lot of conversations about where this data is, how it's collected, how long is it kept for, etc. And I'm pleased to report that I am having more of these conversations. And, there's organizations that are dealing with kids, as an example, same sort of thing. So talking about their suppliers, if they're using software as a service to do whatever they're doing, same thing, looking at the contracts, how they're keeping the data, how they're storing the data, how they're securing the data, because unfortunately you are still responsible for your data. Doesn't matter where you put it, right? So I'm having those conversations. I'm having conversations around data loss prevention, as well as putting in systems like whereby on your email, it just won't accept something that's a driver's license. It'd be like, it's a driver's license. I'm not accepting that email, right? So kind of forcing the correct collection mechanisms. Also, data expiring. So we've got a couple of, again, it's around kids, this particular one. So minors, and after I think they have to keep it for 5 years. So we've set up policies. It's 5 years and 1 day. It goes into a review process and it's actually destroyed. So, and I am glad that we're having more of those conversations now.
Do you think with businesses, companies that are still using the old email situation, is it just lack of information or lack of resources, combination?
I want to say lazy. Because it's easy,
I was going to say lazy, but
it's easy.
I was being diplomatic.
No, it is easier. They've taken the path of least resistance.
Yeah, it's just easier to accept it.
And there's probably still also a bit of lack of understanding of the consequences of what that looks like. And perhaps they don't understand that email is not quite as secure as they think it is.
Yeah.
That the concept that all of those emails that sit in those email boxes, if there's an email compromise, they actually get an email compromise, every single part or every one of those emails is subject to someone going through it very quickly and getting all of that private information out.
Absolutely.
They'll just export the whole mailbox sometimes, and they can just go through it at leisure. But they can do searches on passwords, driver's licenses, all sorts of things. So
yeah, they'll just use
scary.
AI to run those searches and look for passport numbers, look for driver's licenses, Medicare, another one. So as Martin said, a lot of the time, cybersecurity goes into this kind of fear-mongering type situation, right? And they'll talk about the hackers getting you, and email's not secure because it's going through the internet. So obviously it can just be grabbed out, which is true, but the likelihood is low. What's more likely is your email account is broken into because you've used the same password everywhere. It's been, so then Canva has a breach and you've used the same password for your email on iCloud, and then they pop in there and then there's all your email. So for a business, same sort of thing. They're sitting on O365 or Google. They haven't got MFA turned on. Password gets breached somewhere onto the dark web. They just because they talk about it and they can hack in. It's like, I don't know if it's hacking if they just use your username and password and go in, right? So it's a lot less sexy than it sounds. It's literally, I get a username and password. I log in. I then just sync the mailbox. So I've pulled all your mail, all the files that were ever sent to you, straight onto my machine. Then I run searches and I pull out all the data. So if this is a lawyer that's got all the data, it's so much.
It's a lot.
And even phishing. So phishing is still a big way of people getting those credentials. So we still see every single day staff members in organisations giving over their information in phishing emails, and we have talked about it before. Even with MFA, we're now getting to the point where we need fish-resistant MFA.
Correct.
Because even now, some of those MFA methods can still be breached, or they can steal the session tokens as they're going through it. So it's becoming more complex. As we've said before, we've always got to stay one step ahead of the criminals, and they only have to get it right once. We have to get it right all the time.
Absolutely. And then just on the fear-mongering side of things, right? Because I know this comes up and we do need to talk about it. So we're talking about this particular case. It's the first time it's being, a company's being fined, etc. We're not fear-mongering here. It's not like the Information Commissioner is going to go after every business now and they can fine them like at least $1 million because they didn't secure 400 clients details. That's not what we're saying. There's a risk there. Obviously, the Information Commissioner is going to go after the larger companies first, right? Low-hanging fruit that are not doing the right thing and impacts more people. So it makes sense, right? If there's 1 million people involved, whether it's Qantas or whoever it is, those are the companies that you want held accountable, make it better, sort your stuff out. For smaller organizations, this is not a case of like run to the hills, etc. Like it's just not. Like the Information Commissioner is not going to come and hound you, but there is a risk statement here. So there is a risk if you don't look after the data properly. So it's more just, again, like Martin said, it's basic hygiene. How do I reduce the data that I've got? Don't I need it? Delete it properly, put MFA in, put the basics in. That is essentially what we are looking at. So this case highlights the risk, and it's just back to the directors of doing their duties as they should.
Do you think that this case will give you more sort of evidence speaking with boards, like, that this happened to ACL? It's a real life situation.
Well, at least it's not theoretical, right?
Yes.
It has happened, and this is what can happen. So whether they face the same risk, it depends on the size and how much data they have, because it comes down to harm. How many people are going to be in harm's way, etc. So everything is a risk conversation, because that determines how much money and time and effort that you're going to put against it. What we don't want to see is just it'll be fine.
It does highlight, though, that when a board is sitting there and if they have their CISO or CIO or an external consultant like coming in and saying, these are all the areas where you are at risk, and these are the things that we should be doing to reduce that risk, and that board does nothing with that information, that is a big risk for them, because they become personally liable then for actually ignoring that information. So it goes on that a breach does occur because of something that their CISO told them that they should be doing differently. That's not on the CISO anymore, that's on them.
Yes.
So they have actually chosen not to use that information in the way that it was presented and do something about it in their organisation. So what we will see at some point is probably, board members getting either sanctions through the Australian Securities and Investment Commission. So we've seen a couple of those starting to come through.
Very interesting cases.
Where you can get fines individually for the directors for not doing their director responsibilities correctly. And that's where that starts coming in. So then you could start to see a few different ways that your corporations and your companies are actually at risk.
Absolutely. So if you're in the financial services industries and et cetera, where the risk is a lot higher because you have this personal identifiable information, definitely go check out those particular cases. So there's 2 at the moment. There was RI Advice. So this is the ASIC going after RI Advice. So there was a fine lodged against them. And this is around those particular duties for businesses as well as directors. And the other one is FIG. So you can go and look up those 2. I think FIG is not closed yet. I think they're still deciding on the final fine or somewhere around that. So those two cases are super interesting. Not anything to do with the Privacy Act, but around director responsibilities and company responsibilities for securing data and doing the right thing. So, but these kind of all link together, and they are quite interesting. It certainly pushes forward what directors should be thinking about. Like I said, I've named it before, but the governance paper from the AICD, so the Australian Institute of Company Directors, that's a great one to look at. And also the ASD just launched last week. They launched their top directors questions and things to think about, etc., around cybersecurity. And this sort of conversation wouldn't be complete. And again, it will come out from those court documents. If you are in any of those industries where your risk is higher, Essential 8 that the government kind of pushes and says that's what you should be doing, that is definitely a good one to look at. If you've got Essential 8, you are definitely doing the right things, because if you're meeting those specific Essential 8 requirements correctly, and not just saying you are, obviously, then you're going to have the right things in place. For example, if ACL or MedLabs specifically had Essential 8, they would have been patching correctly. They would have had MFA on correctly. They wouldn't have been using out-of-date operating systems and so forth. So that definitely brings you up to a level that's seen to be reasonable.
Yes.
So it matches what you should be doing.
You're trying to do the right thing.
Correct, yeah.
Wow, it's a lot to take in.
Just a little bit.
Is there anything else either of you would like to add about the ACL case, or just obviously breaches in general, or anything else that you think might be relevant to the listeners?
I think probably the takeaways were from this particular case was being able to report early. That's a really big takeaway that was kind of highlighted a lot, that I think one of the things that really went against them was that they just didn't report. Because up to that point, companies hadn't been fined for reporting anyway. So you kind of weren't in a bad situation for reporting no matter what. That was kind of one of the things. Ignoring some of the kind of indicators that were coming through was a bit of a telling point for me as well. Like that, if the Australian Cybersecurity Centre contacts you and say, hey, you might want to look at something, you might want to actually
investigate that.
that one I think was a bit of a sticking point for me as well. And also just on that, they did put through the legislation not that long ago where if you engage the ACSC for assistance, so if you have got a breach and you engage them, they can't actually report the fact that they're helping you to the Office of the Information
And they
Commissioner.
can't disclose any information either. So they can't share that information with any other department, right? To then bring a case against you or anything like that. And that's a really, really good point. And I do want to mention it. Just this case I was dealing with last week as an example. A great legal person, a lawyer, was on there, and she was speaking to this client and just said, just so we're clear, right? You're not in trouble here, right? You've done the right thing. We're going to report. A lot of businesses or individuals, owners of businesses, etc., feel like they're gonna get fined or in trouble because they're reporting it. It doesn't work that way, right? You should be doing the right thing and reporting if there's a potential problem, right? By reporting and doing, you get support. You can get support from your IT department, your the ASD, etc. There's a lot of people that can help. There are. So yeah, the Australian Signals Directorate or the Cybersecurity Centre will have resources. We get an email every now and again that will say, "Oh, we've found XYZ, for a particular can you go and investigate?" And then you investigate it, right? And that's what you should be doing. So.
Yeah, so I think that's kind of the point, is that reporting early or engaging those sorts of departments early is is one of the key takeaways.
Yeah, this is not a stick your head in the sand.
Yeah, I
type
was just about to
situation.
say, don't go into denial.
No, and we do know that the criminals, one of their really clever ways of making people pay their ransoms is when they have stolen data, is that they will report it to the Office of the Information Commissioner themselves.
Yeah.
So when if you refuse to pay or you refuse to do anything about it, they will do the reporting. So just
Kind of forcing your hand.
Yeah.
ignoring reporting is not the answer. It's about doing those things beforehand to try and prevent it or mitigate it or minimize the issue. But then when it does happen, own it.
Yeah.
And really start working towards it, because I think even in the med labs, if they'd reported early, I think that there would have been less likely to have as much thrown at them as they did.
Yeah.
I think that was one of the key areas where I feel that they kind of did themselves
Because it wouldn't
a
have looked
disservice.
good.
No.
Yeah, going, okay, they were just kind of ignoring it or not putting enough importance or impetus around it to actually get moving on it. I think the biggest takeaway for me that I took out of this was going back to setting that bar at the top, so the governance. So it's comes back to the directors to set their expectation and then move that through the organization. And it does start at the top because that's how it gets driven. So I think directors, boards, etc., need to have a think about it, pull it together. It wouldn't be a bad idea to read up a little bit about this case, get an understanding of it. Go look at the AICD documents, get those questions and start asking questions
Yes.
so that you get that stuff in place.
Well, we could pop a couple of those links into the show notes.
Yeah,
anyway.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
To make it a bit easier. Well, thanks for coming along and
course. Yeah.
yeah, and sharing all that information about the case is actually very interesting. And yeah, I think it will be a time of change for boards for sure.
Yeah, definitely.
Absolutely.
So we'll see you again soon.
Thank you.
you.
Thanks.